Keith, on your Instagram last week, you came out on Thursday, I believe, and you said that the beast is coming back, I believe. What does that mean? Is it the fact that you want to go ahead and moving forward, once all this is behind us, that you want to prove once again, from a belt standpoint, that you are the best welterweight in the world? Is that what that meant? What did that Instagram post mean?
You know, I just believe that I have more to give, you know. It was fortunate or unfortunate for me that I had all these ailments coming into one of the biggest fights of my career. And the lack of the outside of the lack of what I didn't do to win in the fight, outside
against Pacquiao, yeah,
there was a lot in preparation for that fight that was very uncomfortable for me in my training camp, you know. So
do you want to dive into that? You want to tell us, or do you want to keep that in house?
No, you know, it's just training with injuries, preparing for fighting with an injury. But fighting with injury means you prepared while injured. Your preparation, and like I keep saying, because a lot of things, there's a lot to do when you reflect on something. There's a lot of information you can get from it when you reflect on it. So when I look at my training camp, of course I know how hard I trained. But when I really look at my training camp, I start to see where, you know, being injured didn't help. You know, how I cut sparring short multiple times throughout camp. You know, and of course we knew that was going to be a thing, but I've been through camps where I didn't get a lot of sparring. You know, you make it up with mitt work, this and that. You've got to focus on your hand-eye coordination, other things. You know, so I've done that in the past, and I've done so much in the past, which allowed me to step in the ring with so much confidence. You know, I've been injured, I've been through this, I've been through that. You know, I'm a true warrior, And like I say too, another thing, at the end of the day, knowing what I really went through, I went through all that to lose by 1 point. And ego or not, I mean, that almost means like I'm still almost unstoppable. Like I easily can boost my ego with this knowledge, you know. I went through so much, 22 months layoff. It took so much negative things to happen to Keith Thurman for Keith Thurman to lose by 1 point. So do you know what happens if I get back to anything to where I'm harmonious again, to where health is aligned, to where, you know, the main key for this year and going into next year and for the rest of my career is no more losing 35 pounds for a training camp. You know, I did that twice last year. So I lost 35 pounds for Jose Cito Lopez, gained the weight back, lost 35 pounds for Manny Pacquiao. That's 70 pounds. That Keith Thurman.
Why is that, Keith? Why is that? Is it because, look, and I ask fighters all the time, in that you guys are making a lot more money, so I assume that you're probably eating better, you know, great, you know, good steaks, good seafood, everything else. Is it the fact that you're able to eat better? Why go up, or is that just a thing that has been a habit of yours, or what is it?
Eating better has something to do with it, you know. And when you're somebody like me who's been boxing since childhood, you know, boxing isn't a seasonal sport. It's all year round. But eventually, when you've been doing it all year round for, you know, 15 years or more, and then you become a pro, at the start of your pro career, you're doing 4-round fights. So you're doing many. Then you do 6-rounders. You're still doing as much as you can. Then you get into 8-rounders. That's where things start to slow down. Your life as a boxer starts to slow down as an 8-round fighter. So it's really just a bad habit of tendencies that we get into as fighters. But when you're no longer amateur and you're professional and you get to an 8-round level and you start to get gaps in between fights, then you get to the 10-round level. Then when you hit the championship level, you get the largest gap. And this is natural. You know, this is just natural. You know, it's because the preparation for a singular fight can be 10 to 12, well, let's say 8 for a 12-round fighter, depending on how their health, they're 22, 28, whatever. anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks, in preparation. Then you have the performance that could likely be a 12-round performance, took some hits, take some headbutts, this and that. You got to recover from that. And really, it's the habit we get into from going from one fight to the next. Because once when you're a world champion, it's like you're Iverson, baby. It's like you're Iverson. Practice? Like, show up for practice? Like, what are we practicing on, baby? Like, this kid keep one-time Thurman. Like, what are we practicing on? But a tool needs to be sharp. So it's just a habit. And you've seen many champions go through this to where they're sharp, they're sharp, they're sharp. Then they go through whatever kind of training camp. They have a fight performance and they're dull, And then they're depressed because they lost. Their trainers try to get them another fight, but he still doesn't have that fire under him, and he's dull again, So yeah, man. To me, it's just the emotions of a fighter, and then just some bad habits, some bad tendencies. I work so hard that I love to indulge and splurge and have cheesecake, a whole one to myself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then when you indulge and you overindulge, and then you get in the habit of indulging, and then you sit around and, it's just to each their own. But it was some tendencies later on in my career, not in my early 20s and 25, 26. It was for me, it happened with the Sean Porter fight. Sean Porter, I fought him once that year. I fought Danny once that year. And then I had 2 years off, just had 2 more fights. And now I'm practically about to be coming up on a year off, and I'm trying to have another fight. One fight a year is not where you need to be as an athlete. It's just way too inactive, and that's why I do believe that, obviously the Keith Thurman that fought Manny Pacquiao was not the greatest Keith Thurman of all times. It wasn't even the Keith Thurman of the old times, in my personal opinion. Another thing when it comes to being a monster and a beast is just acknowledging your strengths and your weaknesses. And one of them for me is my power. And I've boxed so much. I've enjoyed using my IQ and finessing victories. And for once, in the last time, I needed that knockout. And if not the knockout, at least the knockdown. But you don't get the knockdown without going for the knockout, right?
Yeah.
So I needed that. I needed, in the heat of the moment, a moment that I haven't been in for a very long time. In the heat of the moment, I needed the real do it now or never do it. And
so we're going to see more of an aggressive.
The killer wasn't in me that night. Manny Pacquiao got away. The killer wasn't in me that night, and it was an awakening. It was an awakening for me, and I'm hoping to utilize that as motivation. And I think we saw it with Victor Ortiz back in the day when Victor Ortiz beat Andre Berto. He came off of a horrific loss, not even a loss, a horrific loss, and then came back. Didn't really dominate. He had his ups and downs, but put on a terrific performance. And it was because the fire was ignited again. It's because he wanted to see his own personal greatness again. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm striving for now.
So does that make you, the fact that you said that you couldn't get the knockdown against Pacquiao, does that make you more aggressive in fights now moving forward? Because, when you were coming up as a contender, you were wiping guys out. And as you move up in competition, naturally, they're not going to fall. That is a thing when it comes to being a prize fighter.
Yeah.
Because the level of competition is raised, yet you still pulled out victories, with the exception of the loss to Pacquiao. But does that make you become more aggressive and say, okay, I have this boxing IQ, but I need to be a little bit more aggressive and start stepping more to guys like how I did when I was coming up as a contender?
Definitely. Like I keep saying, in retrospect, when I look back on my sparring, I sparred way too much on my back foot and I fought way too much on my front foot, right? So how are you training on your back foot and then performing on your front foot, right? So you know, that frustrated me a little bit. Another thing too is I just got to let my hands go. One of the things that didn't allow me to let my hands go is the knowledge in the back of my head. As I'm trying to hurt you, I might be hurting me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that, I think that's what really allowed me not to pull the trigger that night, because it's you got to go beyond another barrier. It's not even like, do I want to just swing for the fence? I'm trying to hit a home run. It's not even gathering up the courage to just swing at it, you know, at a fastball. It's not even just trying to get up that courage, but the fact that, you know, making contact might not be good for you. Making contact, you know, you need to make this contact, but making that contact might not be good for you. So having that little thing in the back of my head, I'm just learning how much of a crutch it really was, how much of a splinter. I always try to like nullify it, dumb it down. Of course I got to prepare for this fight. So I'm not trying to make it into the world's biggest deal or anything, but it did a lot more, you know. That's why I'm getting back into my meditation, because even with just mental visualization prior to the fight, I think I could have performed better. You know, it's such little minute things. When you lose by 1 point, you can almost blame the world. You can blame the refs. You can blame everything. You know, so there's a lot of small things that I believe that I could have done, that I've always wanted to do too. I've always wanted to do it to bring the best out of myself. So now that I wasn't able to cheat, I wasn't able to slip away and stay at the top, or stay undefeated, even with all my circumstances, because that could have done something to my ego. Maybe I wouldn't have gotten hand surgery. Maybe I would have said, nah, I just beat Pacquiao with this. Let me go make another paycheck. You know,
Mm-hmm.
tell the doctors to
So is
hold
this
off.
more a blessing than anything, Keith, in your opinion? Could this be a blessing in disguise for you, that 1 point loss at the hands of Manny Pacquiao?
A little bit, because the performance was terrific. You know, and I mean, ultimately, I still want that rematch. You know, if he's going to hold on to that belt, and if he wants to be the WBA super welterweight champion of the world, I still want my rematch. Because like I said, I do believe that I have all that it takes to be the biggest problem, like I once was, and I believe I always will be one of the biggest problems in the welterweight division. And I believe that I can get my position back, you know. And that's another thing that also solidifies truly great champions like Muhammad Ali. It's not about just getting in position. It's that even if you lose your position, you have what it takes to take it back, to take it right back. And that's what I would love to do.